Welcome to a new section of the channel. It's called Bike World Garage. Born from the interest in basic mechanicking that we've seen doing workshop features over the years, the aim of this series is to simplify and explain how you can carry out basic maintenance on your own bike at home. We won't be covering anything too technical. It's important to consider that there are lots of jobs on your bike that you're better off just placing in the hands of a professional. This series will increase your basic understanding of mechanical principles. It will bring you closer to your bike and ultimately it will make you a better biker. Join us on this open-ended journey into motorcycle mechanics made simple. So for those of you who don't know who we are, this is Dan. He owns this workshop here, DM Performance. Dan has been a motorcycle mechanic for about 16 or 17 years. My name's John. I've been a motorcycle journalist for about the same amount of time. So I think it's safe to say that between us, we both pretty much know what we're talking about. Sometimes you more than me, Dan. How's it going, mate? All right?
I'm all right, mate. You?
Not too bad.
Good, good. I've been having a little think, and I think the first job we should do to kick this series off is to change a chain and sprocket on your bike, and I've got the perfect bike to do it.
Let's get on.
So first things first, I don't like a dirty bike in my workshop, so John, go and get your marigolds.
Dan, you've picked a beauty for this first episode of the new series. Bedroom wall bike for a generation of bikers, I'm saying.
Definitely, yeah.
Beautiful 998S. They all need a chain and sprockets, but like you said, everything starts somewhere and it's going to be cleaning a bike. So why don't you and I have a little conversation about the do's and don'ts of washing motorcycles. So Dan, tip for tip when it comes to bike washing, I'll start. I'm saying that today is pretty much the perfect conditions to wash a bike outside. If it's too sunny, you are, I think, kick-starting the process of paint fade on panels, and it's a bit of a no-no to never wash your bike in direct sunlight.
I agree with that. I'll trade you. I like to start with the dirty stuff first. So basically I'd start around the wheel area, work my way up, because I wouldn't want to really drag any dirty, horrible grit around the rest of the bike.
So I'll trade you always washing a cold bike over a hot one, pretty much for the same reasons that you wouldn't wash a bike in direct sunlight. It's just not good for the exhaust pipes to have a load of water all over them when they're red hot. And also
brakes, all that kind of stuff.
And we've all done it. These guys haven't done it yet, but they probably will. Nobody likes just accidentally leaning on a red hot engine case when they don't know that it's as hot as it is.
That's a good point, yeah. I mean, I can trade you again.
Let's go.
Even with like a jet wash, you really don't want to be going too close to switch gears, electrical connectors,
so
all that kind of stuff. It's all quite delicate.
Yep. And not just on old kind of classic 90s
even on
Italian bikes. Modern bikes don't like having big power jet washers all over the electric stuff.
That's right.
So I'm going to steal one, if you remember, from the Olins guys that we went to see in the summer with the other project bike that we're working on. And they were talking about jet washing over the chain in the direction of the shock, and how you just don't think about it at the time. But what you could be doing is blowing tiny pieces of grit and dirt from the chain with the sticky chain lube onto the body of the shock. Right, that then picks up more grit and dust, and eventually the ingress of that dirt and dust can deteriorate the performance of your shock and eventually lead to you having to pay for it to be refurbished. So a simpler job as jet washing your chain could turn into a big bill for having a shock refurbished.
There's just a lot of delicate things on a motorbike, really, even down to the radiators and things like that. You don't have to poke the jet wash straight in there. So one final thing before we start washing, I get a lot of customers saying that they don't really want a jet wash being used on their bike. I use one every day. It's a pretty low powered one. It's just really, as long as you're careful and you don't overdo it by getting too close with the jet wash or the nozzle with the jet wash, you'll be absolutely fine.
So that massive £2 for 10 minutes one at the local Tesco's is a no-no?
Big no-no. So what we're going to do, John, is just really give it a light mist over first to try and get rid of all the loose bits of grit all over it. We have got it on an ABBA stand, but you don't need it on an ABBA stand. Side stand's fine, just makes it a bit easier really to spin the wheels without moving the bike back and forwards. This little muck-off unit's a perfect little unit, specific for bikes. We're not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just a good little unit that we use. So as per my first tip, I like to start with the dirty stuff first, which is always the chain on a motorbike. So we're literally just going to give it a quick scrub off. Obviously we're changing this chain anyway. So
there's no point going to town?
No, there's no point in going to town on it really. So I mean, there's really no need to panic. This, you know, this jet wash is designed to not be very powerful, so it's not going to damage the O-rings at all in any way. So now we're using muck-off foam spray. Just going to give it a light covering, the whole bike. This stuff's designed really to be on there for 3 to 5 minutes, but with any chemical on a bit of an exotic bike like this, I don't like leaving it on there for too long. So a couple of minutes will be fine. We're going to use a warm bucket of water just to agitate all the chemicals and all that kind of stuff on there. So now we've rinsed it all off. I know we've said that basically don't do it in the sun, but we're at the end of September now. The sun's not very strong anyway. It's pretty cold here. Good job work, mate.
Nicely done, clean
Nicely
enough.
done, very nice.
Into the workshop it goes?
Yes.
Right. So here we are back in the workshop. We've actually left the bike on the bench overnight to kind of drip dry after we toweled it down after the workshop wash that we gave the Ducati before we wheeled it into Dan's workshop. A workshop wash, we've decided, is different to the kind of Sunday morning scrub that you would do with your own pride and joy outside your house at home. Primarily just to make sure that this bike isn't dragging dirt from the outside into the workshop, and secondarily to make sure that Dan isn't covering himself in crap off the bike when he's working on it. That's done. We're going to crack on and remove the old chain and sprocket step by step. We'll show you how to take it off, and then we'll show you how to put the new one back onto the bike. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, or Dan's going to talk about, is the tools that you need. There's a couple of things that we think you need to ensure that you've got before you begin the process of anything on your bike. One tool that Dan won't really refer to very much, and one that I'm going to push to refer to, is one of these. A proper manual. We're doing all of these garage pieces in conjunction with Haynes, just because to me, I'm more like you than I am like him when it comes to being on the tools. I'm a bit of an amateur. DIY stuff is what I do best. So it's always good to have a solid point of reference, and we've decided that that should come from Haynes. So it's always good to have something solid, a foundation that you can go to, that you can rely on, that will give you exactly what you need if you follow it step by step. Again, that's why we're working with Haynes. They've been at it since 1960. They've done hundreds and hundreds of manuals. They do some great generic ones like this. Dan's probably laughing at these because he's a professional and he probably doesn't need these things. But like I said earlier, for guys like you and I, being able to go straight to the how to change a chain and sprocket section is a really handy thing. Dan, tools.
I always like starting making sure that I've got a torque wrench. I can't emphasise that enough. Get a torque wrench if you're going to do this.
What's the deal? Why is that?
Just for hub nuts,
yep.
Front sprocket nut.
Taking the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I can see a couple of different chain splitters.
Yeah, chain splitters. I've got heavy duty workshop ones,
yep,
because I'm using them every day.
Yep. I'm also seeing a pair of safety glasses.
Safety first.
There's probably not much chance that you're going to get something in your eye while you do the chain and sprockets, but for the sake of it, a bit of belt and braces.
We're all about health and safety these days.
We're all about the health and safety. Yeah. Dan, one fairly heavy duty piece of kit that I can see at the end of your sweet little row of tools is this. Why is there a grinder here? What's going on?
It's a quick and easy way of delinking the chain, basically. Yep. A lot of people will frown upon it, but you know...
You do this a lot?
I do this a lot. I'm comfortable with it.
Yep.
I'm always careful, obviously we cover the necessary things, always make sure you've got safety specs on. And it's just another option if you don't have the tool to do it.
So we'll maybe show people how they can do that later on, but for this job I'm going to bring you back to your roots and try and stick with using the tools that guys like me would use every day.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the correct tool to use, let's be honest.
Yep. Okay.
Chain delinking tool.
So now we should talk about the chain and sprockets. Yep. I can see an arcade chain sat on the bench there. It's a brand that I've heard of and used myself over the years.
Just want to make sure you've got a good quality chain and sprocket kit.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
Not the cheap tut off eBay, nothing Chinese.
Especially on a bike like this.
Right Dan, where are we going to start?
First of all, we're going to loosen the hub off.
Yep.
It's an eccentric hub.
Yep.
Most single-sided swing arms have them. To basically get the chain to its loosest point.
Okay.
So now all we're going to do is basically undo everything. I like doing it with the chain on because these are usually pretty tight, so you can get your misses or whatever to stand on the rear brake to prevent the rear wheel moving. Also put the bike in gear. So we'll do. So as you can see on this bike, that was actually loose. It's meant to be about 156 Newton meters, which is always why I like to use a torque wrench. So that one's nice and loose. And now we'll go to the front sprocket. Take the front sprocket cover off. Like a lot of bikes, I've got a locking tab that you've basically just got to knock it back. So now you can get a socket on the front sprocket. Just going to undo the front sprocket nut, put it in gear, makes life easier, get someone to stand on the rear brake and just undo it. Basically this one's hanging off. I guess whoever done the chain and sprocket kit on this particular bike in the past didn't like the customer very much. Again, use a torque wrench. That's meant to be 186 Newton meters and that was barely hand tight. Alright, it's got a locking tab on there, but that's moving pretty fast. So this link is the Riveted Link. Some of them might have like an R clip on there. A lot of high-powered sports bikes have a riveted link, but we're going to basically remove that now with a chain link removal tool.
How you getting on, mate? One tool we forgot to talk about, the most important one.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Coffee.
I'm basically just struggling with this tool.
Right.
It's quite a rusty chain.
Yeah.
The tool's not cutting the mustard for me.
Yeah.
It just won't work. I'm actually bending the tool, trying to push the link through,
so it doesn't
rivet through.
Doesn't look like a rusty chain, but through lack of maintenance, I guess it's, what is it, C-solid? Or?
Yeah, it's just seized in there. The rivet's seized in the link. So this is where I'm going to show you how to cut the chain off. Yeah, so let's do that now.
This is the grinder shortcut.
Yeah. And it's as easy as that. So now the front sprocket's off, it is a good time to basically get rid of all the crud of all the years of just road surface build up, old chain lube, all that kind of stuff. Basically what I like to do is just get an old toothbrush or your new one, whatever, get in there with a bit of brake cleaner. Again, WD-40 do a good brake cleaner that you can just get in there, it's not going to harm anything. Just give it a bit of a wash out. Agitate it, and that'll just start loosening everything off. Cool. Putting the new front sprocket on. I like to leave the chain on there now. Leave the old chain on there. Basically, it makes life easier putting the new chain onto the bike, which I'll show you now. The reason why I leave the chain on while I'm doing all this, it just makes life a lot easier feeding the new chain in. So I put the old link in like that and just feed it through. Ready for the bin. So now the new chain's threaded through. We just take the rear sprocket carrier off. Remove that. Again, now's the time to be cleaning all this off, and this gives you a good idea of the eccentric hub. So now I've disassembled the rear sprocket from the carrier. We're going to assemble the new one. These run big cush drives through the rear sprocket, which is a bit unusual. You don't usually see this kind of stuff. Usually these would sit inside the wheel. So now what we're going to do is torque the rear sprocket nuts. Now is obviously a good time to be looking in your Haynes manual to see what the specific torque is. And I want to point out as well, regarding the cush drives, obviously check for where they're made out of rubber, so just make sure they're not all split. Cool. Right, so now rear sprocket's all assembled. New lock wiring on there. We can put it back on to the hub. Now we're going to fit the new link. In the link you'll get the new O-rings and a little pack of grease. It's quite important. Just spread it all around. Bit of a messy job. get it all in the new links behind them, just so the new links are nice and lubed. Fit the new O-rings on the other side of the link. Sometimes you need to give them a bit of a press fit. So what I'm doing is pressing on the new link. It's quite important just to get them on nice and evenly. So I'm just moving from one link to the other, or one side of the link to the other, each pin. And it's also important not to over tighten the link, because you'll end up crushing the O-rings, which will cause a tight spot in the chain. So we're just doing it until the O-rings nip, which I'll show you in a sec. And you'll see the pin starting to protrude from the actual link itself. So on this rivet, we can see that what we need to do now is burr this lip over. These ones are hollow, so on this particular tool, we've got two different types. We've got a sharp type, which is going to fit in that hole. Looks a bit brutal, but you basically just have to give it a sharp tap with a hammer. And that's basically splayed the rivet open. So now what we're going to do is torque the front sprocket nut. You want to get someone to put all their weight on the rear brake and put the bike in gear as well. It's just going to stop it from turning, because they are done up quite tight. Obviously torque setting, you've always got to check you've got the right torque. So that's nicely torqued. So now we're going to do the rear nut. Wind that on, torque that up. Get John to hold the rear brake again, of course leaving it in gear. So on this particular bike we've got a lock-in circlip. Basically the pin just goes through the wheel spindle, and just clip that on. Job done. Tiny little cable tie around there I like to do as well, just to keep the clip nice and tight. And that's that. Now what we're going to do is adjust the chain. Pretty important, when you finish with a torque wrench, always make sure that you wind it off. Just relaxes the spring inside the torque wrench. Now what we're going to do is adjust the chain. On a lot of bikes you'll get a sticker on the swing arm or somewhere around the bike to give you the right measurement, chain slack on the bike. Again, if not, refer to your owner's manual, it's usually in there, or a Haynes manual. So basically when you adjust the chain, you're looking for slack. So on this particular bike it's 25mm of slack. We'd always check this when the bike's on the floor or on its side stand. So when the swing arm's slightly compressed or the rear shock's slightly compressed, we'll tighten the chain very slightly. So you always want to check that when it's on the side stand. So we're looking for 25mm of travel, which on this you can see that there's a lot of travel here. So we know that that needs tightening. Nip it up a bit. That's pretty good. Once the rider's on there, obviously again that's going to get slightly tighter as well. So now we're good to torque up the rear pinch bolts.
So that's us done then, Dan.
Chain and sprocket kit done.
Absolutely no need to lube that chain today.
No chains come with their own grease on them.
Yep.
So that's going to last, you know, depending on how you're riding it.
Yeah.
It's going to last a while. Just keep an eye on it.
And I'm guessing, and this is a guess, and hopefully you can give me the answer. You know, when do I come back and check everything? Would I go for a ride for a couple hundred miles and then re-torque everything, or? Me
personally, I'd go for a 5-10 minute ride.
Yeah.
Come back, then re-check and adjust if necessary.
Yep.
The new chain. Obviously, it's going to bed in relatively quickly as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you double check that.
But you're pretty much good to go.
You're good to go.
And we'll cover off how to lube a chain in another episode of this new series that we're doing.
Yeah.
Sweet, nicely done, mate.
Well done, mate.
I didn't really do anything. Thanks very much.
Well done.